meeting to order. First thing be the pledge led by Vice Chairman Coy Young. Thank you, Mr. Young. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Spurlock.
Yeah, we have a draft proposal for a 3-year strategic plan. This plan is a plan that is kind of a live document that will change as we go through each year. We will start off with, we'll have a report from Budget and Finance, followed by HR, followed by our Curriculum and Instruction Department, and we'll end up with our Engineering and Construction. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Doug Boldry up, our Assistant Superintendent of Budget and Finance, and he's going to go over some goals that we have in our draft proposal for that department.
Thank you. Each of you have placed a copy for Budget and Finance, our goals and strategy for the next 3 years. You shall have a copy of this. Everybody? Okay. And also I placed before you, it was a Senate bill that failed in the last General Assembly, this last session, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. In a nutshell, most everything I talk about will always come back to money because most things come back to money, and the need for funding for essential items in the school district. I was going to talk quite a bit about this first point right here that you see on the blown up strategic goals. Here is work with the superintendent. Goal 1, work with the superintendent of schools and you folks on the school board to identify and vigorously pursue recurring alternative revenue streams for both operating and capital need. And with, of course, the purpose of that is with the goal of minimizing the need for future county property tax increases, a focus on new state shared revenues and other alternative local revenue streams will be identified by the Budget and Finance Department and brought to the Director of Schools and School Board's attention for consideration with the goal of an increase in new recurring alternative revenue streams and minimizing the need for future property tax increases by utilizing those new recurring alternative revenue streams. One thing that was vocalized quite a bit through the budget process, of course, and I was just coming on board during the budget process, was not just the commission, but a lot of the people at the public comment time at the budget they wanted to see something else besides just the property tax. They wanted to see a different type of revenue stream, something that would keep that off the homeowner as much as possible. With that in mind, I was going to bring this to your attention. This was some proposed legislation, and this is something that I think that we could pursue. Basically, we'll first talk about the issue on hand, is we're going to need funding for, like I said, both operating but also capital improvements. And you'll be hearing that quite a bit from Mr. Trey Lee when he talks about, our capital improvement needs. I want to bring that forward because if we're going to bring something a need, I'm going to try to bring a solution for that need as well. And Mr. Lee and I have been working quite a bit on this lately. We're going to have to find some funding for some considerable backlogged capital needs in the existing schools. And the reason being, of course, is we as a system we have been growing so rapidly for several years. The need has been we need to put school buildings up, new ones up, to be able to have a place for these children. However, just like your home, there are parts of your house that if you do not maintain your HVAC, your roof, things like that, those over the years, those items are going to need to be replaced and updated. With that in mind, we're going to look at this need because after coming from the last job, we're working with numerous counties in this area. We're in the same boat as them when it comes to these rapid growth counties like us needing additional funding for needed capital improvements of our school system. So if you will, Have a PowerPoint here, and very brief one. And the issue at hand, several Tennessee counties, including Rutherford County, we are experiencing very rapid residential and public school growth. When I define rapid growth, I'm saying 250 more children or more a year growth in a public school system. Now, we're well above that, we're about to see. But when I talk about rapid growth counties, that's what I'm saying is the benchmark, or I mean, the minimum floor is 250 child growth a year. And just like our county, any of the other counties that are experiencing growth, especially in Middle Tennessee, it is requiring additional school construction and expansion at an accelerated pace, which is, of course, putting a burden on the local tax base. The communities that would meet that rapid growth definition of 250 students or more a year would be, of course, Davidson, in Middle Tennessee, Davidson, Murray, Montgomery, Rutherford, Sumner, Williamson, Wilson, along with some other city school systems in the state, including right here, the city of Murfreesboro Public School System would have that growth as well. Rutherford and Williamson counties, we have both sustained an annual average increase of over 1,000 students in our school system for the past 6 years, and we've made it again this year. So we're going to be the seventh year in a row, 1,000 children more in growth. The funding need. Like I said, our rapid growth counties like us, we're going to need to have a new state shared revenue stream dedicated to school debt and capital outlay that can offset the need for increased property tax increases or other local tax increases. This segues into what you have in front of you. This is a Senate bill that was sponsored by Jack Johnson in the Senate and Mr. William Lamberth, in the House in the last legislative session. It was entitled the Local Education Capital Investment Act. A little bit about that bill. It replicates a successful funding scheme of the 2006 Tennessee River Resort Act. In other words, this concept has been done before. This is not, hey, I believe this is a good idea, it's a thought. No, this is capitalizing on a concept that has already been in place in several Tennessee counties that spurred economic development along the Tennessee River. So Mr. Lamberth and Senator Johnson, they introduced this bill to say we're going to capitalize on this concept to provide funding for our rapid growth counties that can help them with the needs for funding for capital improvements and school debt service. Now, I want to make sure to clarify this. This is not a tax increase, what you're looking at. It is not a state tax increase. It's not a local tax increase. What it does is, once again, it's doing a mirror of the 2006 Tennessee River Resort Act. What it does, it returns a percentage of the state sales tax that is situs, which is meaning it was generated in that growth county. It is bringing back a percentage of that state sales tax back to the county that it was originated in to be earmarked for public school infrastructure needs. Okay. Like I said, this was proposed last year in the last session. Got on the floor, and we'll talk more about that. It did not pass, obviously, but it got on the floor. And one of the things that came up that was discussed, well, what about the small counties? What about the smaller rural counties in Tennessee? How will this help? Because that funding is going back to the growth counties. Just looking at economics of the state of Tennessee, you'll see that this would actually benefit all Tennessee counties. Counties like Rutherford, Williamson, and Sumner, Hamilton, they're the economic growth engines of the state of Tennessee. The rapid growth counties they're basically labeled as donor counties with their situs generated sales tax. We all know the main driver for BEP funding is state sales tax. A lot of that state sales tax is being generated in the growth counties, the donut counties among the metro areas. That funding goes up and is included in BEP funding that goes out to every school system in the state, including the rural counties. Should the economy slow down in the larger growth counties due to, once again, the debt payments for school construction and also the capital improvement, that's falling on the local tax base mainly in the growth counties. You keep raising the property taxes and the local taxes up, Laffer curve economics steps in, your increased tax rates slows economic growth in the counties. If it slows economic growth in the counties, that slows sales tax. That means it sinks even the smaller counties with their revenue growth from BEP. You follow me on this? We're basically all in the same boat, even the little counties. This proposed legislation benefits even the most rural county school system in the state of Tennessee. Okay. The way this bill was proposed, it would require a county to have a formal adopted local education capital improvement plan, which obviously the Board of Education here and the County Commission has, and Mr. Lee will be talking about the needs here soon on the older schools, the aging schools, which once again are full and some are at overcapacity. Like I said, this legislation that you have in front of us, it was introduced in the last session, and it was cited as the Tennessee Local Education Capital Investment Act. It was placed behind the budget on the State House floor and was not funded. The priorities were given to other items in the budget, in the state budget, and that was, of course, some that we benefited from is the Safe Schools money that the school board just approved last meeting. They also were wanting to deal with some health issues that they had in some of the state prisons, among some other issues. The fiscal note for this act was around $35 million. There has been considerable discussion among several of the other growth counties about bringing this legislation back to the General Assembly and also to the governor's attention. Governor Lee, this is his first budget that he'll be developing here. So there's been quite a bit of discussion of this needs to go back for the new governor and the General Assembly to consider again, because all of you know our need for capital improvements is growing. The County Commission helped us considerably, with some help with additional funding for capital improvements. But as Mr. Lee's going to talk about, there is a backlog in some items. This was an interesting note right here. Had this legislation actually passed into law as it was written in front of you, Rutherford County would currently be receiving $3,760,904 in recurring funding for school capital projects, which is the equivalent of 4 cents on the county property tax levy for capital projects. So this is real money. This is something that could actually help the county. Moving forward, I would ask y'all to please consider voting on a joint resolution of support, which I can prepare for you. The joint resolution would be with the County Commission to support this proposed legislation. That resolution would be sent to the governor to request funding, funding for this in the upcoming fiscal year budget. That resolution would also be addressed to the county's state delegation to consider sponsoring or co-sponsoring that legislation. Then upon the passage of that legislation, we would request you would request the County Commission to utilize that new revenue stream to service an educational debt issue to address the backlog of needed county school improvements that Mr. Lee is going to be speaking about here soon. Basically, this could catch us up. And then the funding that the County Commission has appropriated in the Capital Project Fund could carry us forward. Y'all have any questions on this?
I think one of the concerns that I have, and I appreciate, because we've been talking about this for a long time, with the governor's initiative of moving up the educational savings account up a year. You know, the last year, we kind of got kind of pushed to the back burner on the other things, including health services within the prison. So I think the sooner that we can talk to, and quite frankly, Thursday's a good opportunity. Senator Reeves will be here visiting some of our schools. I think Mr. Bouldery will be tagging along with us. We'll be talking to him also. Mm-hmm. And Representative Baum, and then Representative Sparks will be talking to, and the other state representatives. I think the sooner we can get this out here, the better off, and perhaps maybe even network with some of these other counties, Wilson, Williamson, Davidson. You know, I can work through the directors of schools from those systems too.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal.
It was already voted on and voted down. How did our representatives vote? Do you know?
I do not know what the vote was. I want to say several of our local representatives were either co-sponsoring it, but I would have to pull it. I can pull it for you, and I can give you that answer, sir.
It'd be good information to know.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on this one?
So it's not that it didn't pass, it's just that it was put behind the budget. So they just,
It died.
just
Yes,
didn't
ma'am.
fund it.
Yes. And that's a good point of why it's so important that this discussion happen now with the governor and our delegation to say, you know, because once January, February comes, it's, you know, it's I don't want to say it's too late, but
Well, it's busy.
yeah. Okay. And if you would like, I'll put that resolution together if you folks would like to have that at your next meeting.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay. There's a couple other, and like I said, I'll just, for the sake of time, because I'm going to head over to the Health and Ed Committee here, and I appreciate Mr. Sparrow. Let me go first to go to the Health and Ed after this. The next couple goals right here, it stresses once again working with the Assistant Superintendent of Maintenance and also with Mr. Sullivan on the operating side. We'll find. I have some ideas with operating revenue as well, and I'm working with Mr. Spurlock on that, and hope to have an update for you soon with that. And once again, something that would not involve a tax increase. It would be some alternative funding that other systems in the state are already doing. The other item that I was wanting to bring up to you about that would involve a resolution of support on your part would be a special census. I know we're currently going through the regular 10-year census. Between the last regular census and this one that's currently going in place, every city in Rutherford County did a special census, except Eagleville. They paid for that themselves out of their city coffers, and they paid for state economic community development. They worked up their census, and the purpose, of course, was to bring more state shared revenue to their cities. One of the revenue streams that we have in our general purpose school budget is TVA revenue sharing, which in part is fueled by the amount of money that we get is fueled by our population. The thought would be is if we would coordinate with the cities, and I spoke to State ECD a couple years ago about this, if the county would coordinate with the cities when they did their special census, that we would all do it together, and that would include the unincorporated portion. Like the county pay for the unincorporated portion of the census, the city's already doing it for the state shared revenue increase. We could all do it together as a county, and we would enjoy not only for the school side with the TVA, that would actually help with motor fuel tax that funds the highway department, because once again we're all basically a big family. It's when you talk about a school, you're talking about a road. When you talk about a school, you're talking about new SROs coming from the general fund, all those state shared revenues that the county receives currently that's tied to population, that would increase with a special census. So if you would like, I'll put a resolution together that currently the county has a subcommittee, a revenue subcommittee that they've created, put a resolution together from you folks to request that they would put that into their plan to say the commission would fund at least one special census in the next 10 years. Might talk to MTSU to do an analysis, say it might even be beneficial for 2 of them as fast as we're growing. So we can get that additional money. Once again, not a tax increase, additional state shared revenue.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Bodie, I don't want to put you on the spot. You may or may not know this, but Mr. Krim spoke last week or the week before about the grant that we would have gotten if not for being kind of ahead of the curve and proficient in having the SRO program. Do you know how much money we lost out on that?
That I don't know. I know it was a different bucket of money that he applied for. I don't know. And the thing too with SROs, because that will be a sheriff department employee, it falls under some maintenance of effort issues that, you know, once that funding goes away, the county still has to incur that recurring salary cost unless they let that person go. So there's other factors that, from the commission side, there'd be other factors that they would look at.
There were some rural districts that had stayed away from that for that reason.
Yes, sir.
You know,
It was. That's because you always wonder if that money's going to be there after next year or next year. But I'll have since you brought that up, I'll have a budget amendment for the state or the safe school money for you folks this next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions on that? Mr. Estes, you said that bring that resolution as well. Okay, yes, sir.
Think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Excellent.
One of the other items that I was looking at for the next 3 years I'll bring the funding, it's on page 2 of the blown up copy, is looking at automation of payroll timekeeping system. Currently, for classified hourly, we utilize paper timesheets, and a lot of school systems in the state do that. But as we've grown, obviously that's become something that we need to look at automating. I've spoke with Wilson County; they've been on it for a while, and also what I was looking at is to just piggyback what the county side of our county is already utilizing, a Gory Reagan system, timekeeping system. This not only would assist us with wage and hour issues and much better tracking of overtime, it would also help on the operations side where they could track, Mr. Sullivan and them could track better the current manpower at each school system, because sometimes they have to transfer from school to school. But that is something that, you know, and I'll bring you an estimate on the funding that would be needed for this, but I believe it would pay for itself, honestly, and, you know, with better use of the manpower. And then, of course, this last goal forward is the school cafeteria fund, and the director of school cafeterias, I asked him to put this together. He did an excellent job, Eric Smith, for a goal for the cafeteria fund and the cafeteria program in our school system is to increase the fund balance of the cafeteria fund to 3 months of expenditures. And at that point, and that's just for cash flow and operations, and once he hits that target, and he's been working on this for about a year already, once he hits that target, then he would bring any surplus over that for a budget amendment to the school board and the county commission, and utilize that additional funding to get newer equipment for the school kitchens and to do some facelifts in the cafeterias themselves, just for more, you know, to be more appealing towards the students and get more involvement in the school cafeteria food programs. Anybody have any questions on that? It's a pretty simple laid out one. And that's my part of this. But like I said, everything goes back to money, I understand, and I just wanted to go first before the funding needs.
I think what he's looking at, and he and I have discussed, it's not going to bring in all that we need, but it will suffice and take care of some of the wants that we have to have immediately.
Exactly.
If we could get that taken care of. I think the sooner that we can get involved and get started that dialogue with this resolution, the better off we'll be.
It's going to be imperative that within the next 30 days, when the governor's working on this budget, it's going to be imperative that the county commission, our mayor, and this board, speak to not only the government, but of course our state delegation, and say, we need this. And Wilson County, you probably read, they just increased their development tax. They basically doubled it, I believe.
Yeah.
I know that has been looked at in Rutherford County, and of course that would be helping for funding of what we're discussing. That state shared revenue that we discussed, new state shared revenue, that could go a long way to pushing away the need for that development tax here locally to fund these needed school improvements. So once again, if I was in real estate, I think I'd be supportive of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next is the Human Resource Strategic Plan. She's going to get into some data with us. I always like information of what we're actually allocating for HR and what we're getting in return.
Hope you have the packet in front of you. That may be something you can follow along with. But again, our department really is looking at recruitment, retaining, training, and making sure we are able to utilize our application system to help best place our employees. So we are trying to support our growing and diverse student population. As Mr. Spurlock spoke about earlier, we're always growing and looking for new avenues. And so our department helps to work with the certified and classified. So we're right at about 5,400 employees. And so the third page talks about one of our main goals about recruitment and retention of highly effective certified and classified employees. Again, I look at that in kind of two lenses. The first lens for compensation. Many of you know that we've been working with our collaborative conferencing team this past year and had a very successful negotiation or MOU, and we're meeting right after fall break again to discuss where we left off on salaries for certified and classified, along with the different percentages for our administration. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then another overview is our applicant tracking system. We've had this system, which is called Hire Enterprise, which is now owned by PowerSchool. And our professional development department has got on board with PowerSchool as well. And so I've been talking with them about some futuristic things that I think will help us to meet our goals as a district. One of our goals is to make sure that we're getting towards 90% of our teachers scoring a TVAS score of 3, 4, or 5. And this PowerSchool group, which is over our applicant system, has a new strategy that they've been using, which is very similar to what we're doing with our aspiring administrators with Gallup. And so I'll talk to you a few minutes about that in just a minute. But a brief overview of cost. You can see on the next page of our Goal 1, when we're looking at recruitment, looking at our signing bonuses and those kind of items for our hard-to-staff positions. On average, we're spending between $159,000 and $169,000 a year for those hard-to-fill areas. Unfortunately, that really helps us to not be starting the school year with many deficits. We also have our coaches and which is our instructional coaches and our athletics and clubs, which we do have an additional cost of $2.74 million a year on that. And we talked about in our MOU group, our collaborative conferencing group, that when you're doing a pay raise, such as that $2.5 million pay raise or additional money that was used for that 2.5% increase, lots of money to be good stewards of and making sure that we are competitive at the same time, paying attention to the amount of money that we're placing into the differentiated pay. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then, again, right now, our current applicant system is costing us about $15,000. And the program I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes, usually most groups use Gallup, and some of the grants are as much as $550,000 with a $50,000 retainer. I've talked to this group. They said a startup of $3,000, which is in my paybook, with additional $38,000 a year of support. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what that can help us do to meet our goals. So the next page talks about how that we're working on training our effective certified employees. You may have heard about our Summer Assist program. We had 180 teachers that were in their first 2 years of teaching. And so we had a summer program over at Siegel before the summer conference to work with them on instructional skills, resources, as well as classroom management to set them up successfully and have some extra little tools in their toolbox for the first day of school. Next Monday, we're in night number 2 of our second round of aspiring administrators. We have 38 in our cohort. They'll be gaining 21 hours of professional development, both on the instructional and the management side. And then next year, we'll be going back to our Teacher Leader Academy, which is for 18 hours, working on data practices, PLCs, creating common formative assessments to help drive our instructional strategies. You see the next chart on there is just a little information about the cost. We do use Title II funds to support our trainings, and so you can see the cost over to the side for those items, which are pretty nominal, for the output that we get. I have a chart in here. This next chart, I think Mr. Estes will like this one. I just went through the September 20th payroll and looked at where teachers fall into their years of experience. And looking at that data, when we ran our first new payroll account, you'll see it's pretty typical. Nationally they say that 50% of our workforce will be millennials by 2020. Well, we're at 48%, so we're right in line. So that's exciting to see our new teachers. And we have 150 teachers that are new with no years of experience, so a great opportunity to grow. And we were able to see 180 at the Summer Assist. So I think that's a great opportunity. We'll be following up with them again in the spring, as well as checking out throughout the school year with their mentors at their schools. But you can see that 4% with 0 years experience, 23% with years 1 through 5 of experience, 21 with 6 through 10, 19% at 11 through 15, 15% with 16 to 20, 15% with 21 to 30, and then our smallest population, 31 years plus at 3%. So that can kind of give you some ideals. Our current latest numbers are now, for certified teachers, 3419. So that can kind of give you a little idea of where they're falling into, and maybe some trends. We've been working on our stay and our exit interviews, discussing what our teachers are wanting and desiring and what they're loving about our district. And again, if you haven't checked that out, go on our website, go under careers, and you can see why I choose Rutherford County. You can see that it's a lot about that culture piece, about that feeling that they have in their schools for their students and their co-workers. So that gives you a little information. We jump back to signing bonuses. We talked a little bit about that. We talked about it the other night when we were talking about how it's impacted our hiring ability, especially with ESL. We really got a lot of bang for our buck with ESL. From several other counties, they have paid for those students, those teachers, to get their education and get their certification in ESL, do whatever nominal amount of time that they've required in their district for them to perform after they paid for it, and then we've been able to get them to come to our district and to be able to retain them. And that's on the average of 14 to 15 a year to meet the guidelines. There's more? Yeah.
Could you go, I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
Could you go back to that previous page?
Sure.
When you had breakdown by the years. How does that impact us as far as our fringe benefits, our insurance and things of that? Are we seeing a trend of which one of our programs that these teachers are getting on, or?
Most of them, because they are in the millennial group, are getting the free insurance. Most of them are still the HRA, the single. And basically from the 3 insurances, they have only 50 in that middle group, and then the rest pretty much are the ones, the family plans,
It's
take the
kinda
money out.
impacting us there also, so.
It sure has. It sure has. They've selected that.
Dr. Anthony, sorry to stop
problem.
your train there, but while we're on the subject of signing bonuses, is this something that we still compete with other surrounding counties, I'm assuming, are doing signing bonuses too? And if so, where do we stack up in the competition as far as what we're paying?
Signing bonuses, we probably are, I'd say, the most competitive. When it comes to national board certification, which is rarely, occasionally we'll get some teachers. Metro does do a signing bonus for a national board certification, in any area. So that's pretty much the only other competition. I talked to the HR director from Bedford County right before I walked in here. We're getting a special ed teacher that they're holding a course for 30 days. But the signing bonus was one of the contributing factors, according to the teacher, that they wanted to work in our district as well as receive that compensation. So it does help us to pull for those hard-to-fill positions for foreign language, math, chemistry, physics. The state rarely puts out physics teachers, about one a year or one every other year. So, we were able to really pull from other districts when they're watching our website daily to see what kind of openings we have. And then, that's one of the conversations that they have with us. Am I eligible, looking at my license, am I eligible for that signing bonus?
Great, thank you.
So we talked about ESL, and you can see the statistics there. And like I said, it's really great when other districts are paying for their training, and then we're able to get them with that training and that experience when they come to us. So I know Ms. Hall and ESL is very excited about that. Again, 3 physics signing bonuses this year alone. I mean, that's phenomenal. 5 chemistry. Those are very, very hard to gain, as well as 19 math. And the math test is very, very hard for many of them to pass. We've talked about some possibilities from the state of dividing that up on their testing, so that may help them across the state, because that is a hard-to-fill area. So we're excited that we're seeing the progress of our teachers wanting to come to the district, and then they are definitely in those hard-to-fill areas. We're not having those opening of the school year with 300 and 400 vacant spots like some districts are, so that's really great. And our retention rate, we went up to a 91% retention rate. We were 90 the year before, so we're really looking to continue that improvement and stay over that 90% line and help our teachers and our principals to, make sure that they are growing their teachers and supporting them. So the next one I wanted to show you was what I was telling you, that I was talking to our online HR management system. They have a test what's called an EPI, and it's on a Likert scale, and they give every applicant, whether they're a teacher, a principal, or a support staff person, a little Likert scale test. And if statistically, what they found, that if the employee scores a 50 or higher, then they're able to show at least 1 year's growth. Now, this is data over across the United States, and they currently have surveyed 220,000 employees. So when it comes to the teacher side, the 220,000 teachers, this is what they have found, and this would help our principals immensely, the stress of the principals when they're looking at the applications and they're trying to make that determination. This would be an additional tool for them to see if they can see something beyond the interview and beyond their resume. Sometimes there's a little bit more to it, and this will help measure their cognitive ability, their relationships, their skills, those kind of things. And that will help the principal kind of have a little better idea of exactly who that applicant is.
Dr. Anthony, can I ask you a question? And I should have asked you when we were in that meeting.
Okay.
Would this occur at the same time of the application that was submitted? I'm assuming that's the way that would work.
Yes, and the score would be good for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And what's exciting about that, I'm glad you asked that, what's exciting about that is because once you get your score back, then the principal receives that score immediately. They can see what that score is, and then this Power School company sends questions based on that person's scores to help them to be able to determine their reinforcement and their refinement areas. So it's a very driven, you can see some sample questions, I think it may be on 2 pages down, results from their educator professional inventory of prescribed interview questions to get the most out of the interview process. And that means a lot. A lot of times you're trying to, make sure that you're getting every bit of information from the employee when you're interviewing them. And this kind of gives you an opportunity to gauge their strengths and then areas that you would want to assign a mentor to help support that teacher if you were to select them.
Let me ask you one more question on that. Would we be able to somehow have that on our platform where our application is submitted?
That's
We could
correct.
put that in, so we could integrate that.
It would be embedded into their application.
Gotcha. That's great.
So I think it's really a great opportunity just to kind of support our principals in that selection process and help them with that very timely process when they're looking through those applications. And then just an additional tool in addition to their interviews, in addition to their research when they've done the background checks and those kind of things. So you see that the Likert scale test measures teaching skills, and you can see the items under the teaching skills, cognitive ability, attitudinal factors, and qualifications. So again, it's just an additional tool to help them gauge that and then help us to meet our district goal in scoring at least a level 3, 4, or 5. So you can see the next page that was talking about the interview type of questions, and then just some sample opportunities for improvement. Again, the questions come specifically based on how the employee answers the questions. So that's an opportunity. We're going to be talking again to them right after fall break to get to talk to some more of their officials that have implemented this throughout the nation. And they've given me some additional context that I'm grateful for, to be able to see how other schools and districts have been able to use it.
We do have other districts in our state that use this currently
Yes.
now. And
Yes.
is Wilson County one of them?
Wilson uses one that's very similar with the Likert scale. Williamson has a Likert scale, and I believe it may be Cleveland.
So when we bring in a new teacher, someone new to the profession, and we do their training and everything, approximately how much money have we invested, even and include there a bonus perhaps maybe for a math or science? How much money are we talking about we're investing in them?
Annually, probably about $2,500 is a good approximation. And if you lose that person and you're able to retain them and you're not able to find out what it is that makes them want to stay and grow, such as the millennials, they want that flexibility in scheduling. They want the opportunity to move up in the district in different roles, whether it's vertically or horizontally. So you're always having to look to see what is, and have your finger on that pulse, what is it that's keeping them here, and then what can we do to retain them. So we're always listening and engaging that information from them to try to make sure that we're able to retain them, so we can be able to continue professional development and then again to sustain the national teacher shortage. We're fighting that battle, and every school district is doing that, so we're all competing for the same small pool, and so we want to be able to pull out the best candidates, and we think this could really help us to streamline that process.
Dr. Anthony, at our fall district meeting the other night with TSBA, the question came up, what do we think as far as the amount of credits required for some of these hard to fill positions, math, science, world languages. World language is one that I don't know that we need 2 credits in order for a student to graduate. That was one that just popped out at me. If we could reduce those, and I'm not saying all of them, but if we just look at some of these and reduce them, that should help us with our numbers on these hard to fill positions, I would think.
Yes, and the State Board of Education is really looking at that, as well as licensing to be able to teach those type of classes because of that shortage. You're correct. The shortage in Spanish teachers, being able to pass the praxis test, the shortage in math teachers, being able to teach the upper curriculum, the calculus and the physics, and the statistics, the part I love, as opposed to many of them really feel like their calling is to teach the first three levels, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then they're looking to divide out that praxis so that we can have a better opportunity to gain those teachers. And I think that sometimes it keeps the people from going into the field because they know that their abilities lie at a certain level, and so does their heart in teaching that content. So I think the state is really taking a hard look because this is not only a state issue, but it's a national issue. So
That was
you're right.
brought up, Mr. Young, in our conference, and Dr. Morrison, the State Board, Executive Director of the State Board of Education, brought that up. They're looking at things like that. They're looking at perhaps maybe someone who was in engineering that retired and want to come in and teach math, just take the praxis and not make them go back and get another degree. They're using some common sense, I think. And I think it's predicated on the shortage, and it's not just unique to Tennessee, it's all across the country. But, math is, I don't think we have, I think we have 0 applicants this semester at MTSU in math. So it's
correct.
concerning.
And the pool continues to go down in our other subject areas as well. One time we had a large pool for English and social studies, and that pool is declining as well. So it becomes a challenge across all areas now.
I mentioned I'm on the steering committee with MTSU. There's working with SCORE now, and there's a lot of great things that I'm finding out. I do think MTSU's education program are doing a good job.
Training.
Obviously, everybody can improve, but it's just a challenge. And some of the solutions they're coming up with, until we can make this profession attractive again, I think we can reduce the tests they have to take and things of that nature, but I still don't see the recruitment part. That's the issue right there. How do we motivate? I think some of the things as mentioned, I think we'd all agree, student debt. Being able to wipe out some of that stuff right there, that would be a start, because I think on an average MTSU, a graduate from MTSU today graduates with in excess of $23,000 of student debt. So there's some things that they're going to have to think outside the box. They are going to be coming over sometime next week, is that right, MTSU, and meeting with some of us about their program. So like I said, that's the biggest thing. I get all the growth. I love this assessment here. I think that prevents you from sinking your money into, because quite frankly, years ago, I could stay in a room with interview a teacher and identify right off the bat how effective they're going to be. But now it's a different mindset, and we need additional resources to identify, are we providing an effective instructor within each one of those classrooms? And I think the answer to that is we look at our data from 2014 to 2015, and we look at the number of teachers that would be scored what we call an effective instructional leader. We've seen a decrease. Now, I would have to fall on the sword and say it's not all their fault. I think it's been some of our fault as far as in our instruction of growing our teachers. But I think we're on the right track now, though. I do think that. But I'm still concerned about the recruitment part of it.
True. I agree with that. One of the things that our district's been working on, and Ms. Pilgrim has been spearheading that in our career and technical department, is growing our own teacher profession, trying to get the dual credit hours of 4 hours for them to go into the program. So we're kind of streamlining some existing career and technical courses that we've had before to help us to grow our own teachers. So we're hoping to see some choices on that. I think I read a statistics the other day was something about less than 2% of the 2 million people that take the ACT have an interest to enter the field of education. And so we're going to have to change that so that they will enter it, and we're going to have to work with them on their licensing and the flexibility if we're going to see the field increase again with numbers, because it is a challenge, you know, and the money and the debt, and then all the extra items that, you know, just life comes at the young people at the time, and so sometimes they have to take jobs in other fields just to be able to pay off that debt and get it down, and then wait to go back to where their heart is in education.
I would encourage you to reach out to Clarksville Montgomery. They're doing a pilot called Grow Your Own through Austin Peay, and it could be something that we could work with MTSU, because there are some incentives there as far as financial incentives that are making it less burdensome for those to go back and get a degree in education.
Yes, I've talked with Clarksville, and the HR director was the president of the state organization right before I did that last year, and she said that Austin Peay got a minority grant from the state that was offered back in 2017, and what they did is they looked to see where they had hard-to-fill areas, and they had hard-to-fill areas in K-5. We usually typically middle high school, and so their challenge up there is K-5 and K-8 special ed. So what they did is they redesigned and did a 3-year cohort, and they've been into it for a month. And she told me, she said, "We've only been into it for a month, Andrea." And I said, "Well, I'm excited to hear about this because I'd like to see how this is going to turn out." They took applications and have in their cohort of 40, they have 20 students who graduated from their schools that have decided they want to go into the teaching field, and then 20 EAs who have had some form of college that show those skills they're becoming of a teacher, and they are doing a 3-year year-round cohort to get them certified in K-5 elementary ed, and then they've substituted student teaching with 4 special ed classes so they can add that on to fill that need. And in elementary ed, she explained it to me. I said, "Do you have the need at the high school level?" She said, "Of course," but in this particular cohort, this was the way that the university could spearhead that. So that's an opportunity definitely for a K-5. I'm sure in time that will become harder and harder to fill an opportunity. And now that they have that 40 cohort that just started about a month ago, Clarksville Montgomery paid for half of their schooling, and then Austin Peay paid for the other half, on top of all the scholarships that they would get, minority scholarships, Hope scholarships, those kind of things. So they're a month in, and they're excited to see how it's going to go. I talked to their chancellor and also to Susan Jones from the State Department that was in initially with them on the grant, and told her to be watching to see if there's any opportunities for us, if they offer any other additional grants that might be able to help pay for those costs.
With us developing our own EPP, we're currently the only one that is licensed to do that.
That's correct.
If we could somehow cross over into our core classes, I think that would
I
be.
believe that's going to be our next step.
I think there's a possibility that could exist there. I think what it's going to do is it's going to take some time as far as determining how the fidelity of how we're doing. And I will say I think we're doing it real well.
Absolutely. The framework that we're using with High Schools That Works and SRAV, I think we're on the right track with that. And I know Ms. Pilgrim and her team is 15 wonderful people in their occupational licensing classes. So that's a great opportunity to prevent them from coming out with additional debt. So that's our starting place. Okay, and so then the last page, I just wanted you to see an overview of ASSIST. When we do Teacher Leadership Academy, we'll try again to do that again in the spring. We'll streamline that. That was a sample of what we had done in the past. And then you can see our agenda on the last page for aspiring administrators. So we have several great practitioners in the field that are talking with our future administrators. And so, any night, if you would like to come see it, you're welcome to come by and see us. Just excited about the opportunity to grow our employees and to retain them. Ms. Sharp?
Yes, Dr. Anthony. And I've been meaning to ask you this because I'm aware of an EA that we have in our system who has been here for 17 years. Mm-hmm. She's a special needs teacher, and she has some college, not enough for obviously teaching. Do we have something like that where we can assist our seasoned educational assistants?
We do not have a financial body right now through our school system, but I did talk to an employee the other day, this may be the same one, and I hooked him up with Bobby Lucier from MTSU for existing employees who are in good standing that may only lack 4 classes. I don't know if this rings a bell. 4 classes to be able to complete, and then we could start them on the job embedded and then pick them back up on our end and train them.
I don't know that finances is the problem, but you know, like you said, life happens.
Sure.
But I would love to see some of our seasoned employees, especially those that have worked with our special needs, retained, and then if they wanted to go somewhere else.
And many of them are doing that. It's really quite unbelievable how many of our EAs this year we've been able to help shift into teaching positions because of their degrees, whether it's in accounting or whether it's in English or math or whatever it is, to be able to go through the job embedded. So we work with them along with the university to make sure that they're able to get their credits and try to look at funding resources. A lot of times it's funding. And so there's
of course, it's always
some opportunities that we've been working with MTSU. We have our next EPP meeting with MTSU tomorrow from 9 to 11, and we're going to be going over some of our data for human capital. At that time, they're sharing their report card. They get a report card as well, and we'll be able to hear a little bit more about some of their funding opportunities they're going to do this year.
One of the things that when she's talking about human capital, I want to make sure that we all understand it. What we have data on is we have teacher effectiveness, and we have what's identified as at-risk students and non-at-risk students. And what you want to see is you want to see an effective teacher being available for both groups. I think as we see in elementary school, it's pretty close. I mean, in elementary school, it's probably less than 1% gap there. You get in middle school, it gets a little bit more pronounced, and then when you get in high school, it gets greater. Now, I can defend some of this by saying that because of the specialty areas. Sure. However, we still have to continue to look at that as as we get our information, our data more quickly. We can build in programs to assist to grow our teachers and more. Because ultimately, I mean, I think the research shows that if a child is with a ineffective teacher more than 2 years in a row, that we never do recoup that loss of growth. But I think we're on the right track. I really do. I mean, see, we're in a terrible situation where we have a reduction in our workforce. At the same time, we have to grow our teachers. And there's a lot of challenges. I mean, I've always said, and I still will say it, that I think our EPPs are preparing our teachers better than they've ever have. But there's a lot more required of them nowadays.
That's right.
A lot more required of them. And our teachers are having a lot of challenges, but we do appreciate all their hard work. And I do appreciate some of the things. I think these are kind of things, the cognitive thing, we're including that in there. That's going to provide our principals with a better tools to be picking out successful teachers.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is our curriculum instruction department.
Good evening, thank you. Just a couple things really to start off with. So we talked about the teacher retainment issue. Really, I feel like that is part curriculum and instruction's responsibility as well. We have to make sure that we are simplifying things for our teachers because we know that in working with an ever more diverse student body, and we know our students come to us with more and more needs, we need to ensure the things that we're providing them are resources that are actually going to be tried and true for them, and that we're providing them a framework that they can operate within and really focus on what matters. And so when we think about that, and just wanted to provide a little bit, so when we think about Rutherford County, we're over 47,000 students now. And when we think about that compared to the state of Tennessee in the last report card had 975,000 students. So that's 5% roughly. It's 4.8% of the student body in Tennessee is educated in Rutherford County, not Murfreesboro City, but total in Rutherford County schools. So that is an unbelievable task, not just for our county, but our educators, but everyone involved. Very similar when we think about teachers. So we have roughly 3,200 teachers, and I think there's 63,000 educators in the state of Tennessee that are actual classroom teachers, and it's about 4.9% of that. And so we are right at 5% of the number of students and number of educators in our state. So when we think about curriculum and instruction, really what does that look at? So we've got several goals here. The first one being teacher capacity, because it begins and ends with our teachers. And those are some things we've already started working on, really strengthening that current PLC framework, so our professional learning communities. And so we've gone about that in a couple ways. One, we've really made sure that our teachers are focused on knowing what our standards are, the things that at each grade level that our kids have to learn, then figuring out how are we going to assess whether or not they have learned them, and then responding to whether or not they have or haven't. Within that, we've developed our curriculum leads. And these are things that a couple months ago we asked the school board for permission to use part of our Title II budget to invest in our own teachers. And we've had 2 very successful meetings already with those groups. We've met with 450 teachers on 2 occasions. We'll have our 3rd meeting on Thursday. We started with overall PLC framework when we looked at standards last time. This time we're looking at assessment and making sure the things that we are asking our students to do align with the things they're actually supposed to be learning. And so that's just looking at strengthening our current PLC framework. Next one, alignment of instructional coach positions. So we have within curriculum and instruction, I think 10 or 11 coordinators, and making sure that we're all saying the same language, just simplifying that. And then developing a district-wide professional development framework is something that we're continually working to build upon. Looking at the next one, so an effective curriculum, really looking at the things that we provide our teachers, whether or not they are online resources or they are textbooks, ensuring those are things that are actually going to be useful for our teachers and for our students. If they're not working, then no longer continuing to use them. And if we find something that is working, making sure that that becomes something, but allowing things to have time to actually work and see if they're impactful on student outcomes. And then that second one, really that collaboration, I talked about with the curriculum leads, but that collaboration between our instruction department. We are, in our instruction department, are leading instruction, but we're not teaching a student. And so we need to have that collaboration with our teachers and our principals in our schools to see what are the things that you actually need and what are the impacts that we're having. That third goal talks about parent engagement, and that's one that I'm probably one of the most excited about. Parents working and may not necessarily have all of the time to be as involved as they would like. I know myself included. My kids have a parent thing tonight, but obviously I can't attend that. And so we have that happen throughout with a working class. And so we want to make sure that even if our parents aren't involved in things, they're engaged in what's going on with their child. And mentioned it last night at our town hall meeting, developing these parent framework guides so that at each grade level, parents know exactly what they should expect from 4th grade English, for example. This is what your kids should be able to do by the time they leave 4th grade English. Here are some quick things that you can do with them at home when you're reading to them to ask them questions about that. So that's our third goal, looking at that strategy. If you'll flip over to the back. Goal 4 is looking at school and student equity. And so when we think about students across our district we have varying needs, especially more towards our northern end of the county as we continue to have that more diverse population that we are serving, understanding that all of our schools aren't exactly the same and they all have individual needs, and figuring out a framework to be able to support those individual needs. Yes, we have our title funding in that way to support needs, but as a school district, what are some things that we can do to provide a little bit of different support as well? That next one talks about enhancing the school staffing formula to provide support for those schools. And really what we're talking about there, so if we think about kindergarten through 3rd grade, the staffing ratio with BEP that they fund is 1 teacher for every 20 students. And so even if it's something as much as if we have a school that's over, let's just say 70% pre-introduced lunch, trying to lower that number to 19.5. That's not a whole lot, but it is at least acknowledging the difference that different student demographics and different populations of our schools have different needs to be able to support that. And then that third one, utilize our RCS Online. We know that the online platform is something we can use, and looking at ways to be more effective, but also some cost-saving things as well. If we think about our traditional summer school and we think about online learning, we're doing both at exactly the same time at a pretty tremendous cost for both of those, and trying to marry those two in the middle to save some money.
Let me add that, one of the things that when we look at our summer school, our traditional summer school, it's about 50-50 currently, new credit and remedial work or picking up credit. Now, we need a 95% graduation rate. That's non-negotiable. But we think that we can get both of those done without using 10 or 15 teachers, an administrator, maybe 2 administrators, a director, and save a lot of funding that way. And I think it's long overdue, quite frankly. Some of our larger districts like Hamilton County and a place like that have gone to straight online. Now, it's going to require, I don't think we should just roll it out immediately, but I think that we should get some feedback on how we can proceed with that.
Right, absolutely. Those are just some ways to kind of look at school and student equity to try to make things not equal but equitable. Our next one is one that, of course, drives us, so accountability. And so those first 4 goals, the teacher capacity, effective curriculum, student equity, professional development, and parent engagement, those all address accountability. But just to kind of separate and have some measurables, 90% of our schools attain level 3 or greater composite growth. And so when we think about accountability, we think about the achievement aspect, and we have schools that really excel achievement-wise, and then we have schools that really excel growth-wise. And regardless of what type of school we have, our students should be growing when they're in our schools. And so trying to move that number of schools that we have that are achieving a level 3, 4, or 5, which is representing students growing, to 90%. And then decrease the number of level 1 teachers by half each year. So when we think about individual level 1 teachers, we're thinking roughly about 120 teachers each year in a tested content area that when we talk to our principals, they talk about, my teacher's working extremely hard and the results aren't showing. And so usually what that means is we're probably working on areas very hard that aren't the right areas. And for us, we've chosen to take the approach of the standards. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sullivan, I'm just curious, with the teachers that are at a level 1 or even level 2, is there any correlation that we see that relates to their years of service? In other words, how long they've been teaching? Are they typically newer teachers that fall into those levels? And so there's hope that we can still grow them and turn the ship around.
Yes, absolutely. That is really when you think about teachers, and when the state talks about effective teachers, they really say that a teacher or students are unsuccessful for 2 reasons. One, that they just weren't an effective teacher, which we find is very rarely the case. Second, that they are not focused on the standards if it's a tested area, and that they are teaching something. I was in a PLC meeting today, and it was a great conversation with a group that talked about, we went very far into 8th grade math with talking about functions, but we spent a week teaching something, and that's not what the kids are going to be held accountable for this year. And so those are easy fixes that when we are talking about ways to help teachers, that looking at ways to help new and struggling teachers to focus on the right things.
And I think that's when we develop what's called a POA, a plan of assistance, that's what it is. And in order for it to work effectively, we should be doing periodic checkups with the teacher. Right. As we're going around, one of the things that we do, when we go in and we're evaluating a principal, we do walks. We'll let the principal take us into a classroom for the instruction. We don't say anything, we're in there, we're observing. We'll go 3 or 4, and then when we'll come back and we'll sit down, the first thing that we ask, what did you see in the classroom that you thought was effective instructional practices? What are some things that you did not see? And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a capacity. Now you say, well, you're doing that with principals. We still have to do that. I mean, they're responsible for a lot of things, but first and foremost, they got to be a strong instructional leader. And I think by doing that, it reinforces what to look for. And I think you hit on something that has been a problem. I think we have worked very hard, but we weren't working hard on the right thing. And when he comes, what he does a great job, and his staff, they get a blueprint from the state, which identifies what percentage of this assessment can you expect on these particular standards. And with that blueprint there, that should provide them where you get the most bang for your buck. Now, not that we don't want to cover everything, but like you said, we can spend more time on that rudimentary standard and not enough on the deeper standards, or maybe just gloss over the hard standard without getting into, level 2 and 3.
Right, and that's probably where, so when we go back and talk about our curriculum lead, what was an unintended consequence, I guess, and it was a very much a positive, is that we were really trying to ensure everyone was working on the same direction. But what has happened is that we now have teachers that did not have relationships with other teachers across the district that are collaborating with each other, and if it is a very intense math standard, since we really do struggle to find math teachers, they have resources across the county now that they can reach out to and help. And so that was unintended, but it has worked beautifully. And then the last one for accountability is to earn exemplary district status. That's one that we want to ensure that we try and hit every single year. Next one, goal 6, so increase the percent of ready graduate students to 60% by 2023. So when we think about accountability, another portion of that is this ready graduate indicator. And when we talk about that, that's the number of students who are earning 21 in the ACT or earning a certain number of EPSOs based on a couple other areas, or our early post-secondary opportunities that Dr. Chastain and Dr. Martin and Tyra Pilgrim talked about last night at our town hall. And so ways we're going to look at that is continued support for ACT growth and strategies. And we've got a plan with each school to ask what their needs are and try to help grow our ACT at each school. And then really looking at an approach to complete these EPSO portfolios for each school, and then educate not just our staff, but our students on and parents on what all of these opportunities are going to be for them. So when we look then at goal 7, so increase the number of students receiving certification in CTE class from 318 to 800 by 2022. And so I know that's a big jump, but that's something that at a district our size and the amount of support we put into CTE, that there's no reason that we can't obtain. And so really having just purposeful alignment between our courses that our students are taking and the pathways that we offer at each school to allow that to really move towards an industry certification. Part of that, and an area that we're going to kind of work on within our department, is that some of these initial industry certifications are things that students can afford, but as they move into more advanced industry certifications, the cost, we're looking at $200 or $300, $400 a piece. And that's really hard for a family or student to have to work towards. So we're going to look at, within our department, what are ways that we can start building in to support students with that. And then the last one is establish a middle college high school in Rutherford County by 2021. And so when we talk about a middle college, you're looking at really a partnership between a institution of higher education and probably to start off your junior and senior classes so that you can get some of that work. And I know we have some of that already with some of our collaborations, Laverne High School and Motlow, and all of our schools have that collaboration, but trying to develop a specific middle college that would address some of these needs for some of our other students.
One of the things I've met with Dr. Torrance, and he's on board with Motlow, developing this program. I don't think you can limit us to Laverne area. I think it could be, because he is, my question to him is, can we use your facilities? And his answer was yes, we can provide some. Now you're probably looking at maybe somewhere around 100 students, something like that. These would obviously got to be self-motivated to meet the requirements. When we went to, I think, Ms. Moore, you might have been with us when we went to Knoxville at Pellissippi, and they were doing a CTE. I don't know if you were there or not, but they had a CTE program, CTE Academy. Well, they found out they had it started from 9 to 12, and then once you hit your junior year, you have to have a certain score on your ACT in order to go into the dual enrollment, and they didn't. So what they did is they changed it over to a middle college. They changed that over to middle college, and it's been more effective. Sumner County's got one. I think Williamson County changed theirs to Renaissance. The way I look at that would be very beneficial to us. It would not only give them an opportunity, but also have a program of study to get an associate's degree. Now, that would look a little bit different in terms of what the schedule would look like. It would perhaps go on a alternating block. On even days, they would probably do their high school courses. On odd days, they would do their college courses. And at the end of that 2-year, leave with not only a high school diploma, but also a associate's degree. And that's something we got to work through. I think even in Chattanooga State, I think some of you guys went down to Chattanooga State and saw that. That's kind of like what they did at Chattanooga State. with their program. Now, currently, they started out junior and senior year. Now it's 9 through 12. I mean, they've actually, gone that route.
And the first thing we want to do is identify the districts, and Mr. Sproat talked about Sumner County and Chattanooga, and identify the districts and see what are some of the hurdles that they had that we don't anticipate, and try to use this year as a learning curve so we can start putting a real plan in place next year.
And he gave us a couple of places to visit. Some of them are out of state. I don't think we're going there, okay? But I do think that there are some things we need to learn about this. One of the things is once they leave us, now they graduate with us, but they actually become a student of that post-secondary institution.
And I know that's simple, but I try to believe in clarity, and so I tried to keep it simple. So questions?
On the blueprint,
Yes, sir.
do our teachers get copies of that?
Absolutely. And so that has been one of the biggest things that we have worked on with our curriculum leads, is that at the very beginning of the school year, so the blueprint should, in a perfect world, be updated before school starts. They're never updated from the State Department before school starts, which makes it really hard to design a curriculum when you're working on last year's things. But as soon as those came out, I believe it was August 15th this year, we had a curriculum lead meeting right before that. We met, showed them where they were going to be, and as soon as they came out, we had a distribution process in place, and then all of these curriculum leads had to go back and train their teachers on them. It's something we've had for decades. We used to be called a blue book. Now it's a assessment blueprint. I mean, they've been around forever, but timely information would be better. Luckily, they don't change too much from year to year.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lee, in his book. Absolutely.
I think one thing you're going to see with this year, especially with Mr. Crum coming on board. We've spent a lot of time going through, and we had started this prior to Mr. Crum, but having him come on board, it's really gave us a different viewpoint, different perspective, different set of eyes. You're going to see that engineering and construction, informational technology, and school safety align. There's a lot of things that we started 3 or 4 years ago that maybe wasn't explained to you guys, and maybe some of it I did without permission, to get us started, that now is beginning to pay dividends for us, and we're going to continue to go forward. I think you saw in Mr. Crim's budget, he had $300,000 for DVRs and cameras and these types of things for our schools. We're behind. But between informational technology, capital projects, and school safety, if we can pool all our monies, we can get us caught up very quickly. So that's one area that you'll see. You'll see that sometimes those bleed over as our 3 goals are the same. So we'll start with engineering and construction. Goal 1, you've already heard, roof replacement. As part of your packet, we'll go through this and then we'll go through there. Goal 2 is our HVAC system. I think we started this in the fall last year with the capital projects list that I gave everybody that kind of knocked everybody over at $22 million. And I tried to not shell-shock it, but tell you it's going to be, as we go along, it gets worse. Goal 3 is to rekey our buildings. Right now we have schools that, there's a lot of keys to these buildings. We're trying to get them secure, cut down the number of entrances, go to our Primus system and get these rekeyed. Part of this, we started this year at capital projects. We're spending $425,000. And the large portion of that is for keys. Goal 4 is to replace doors and hardware on problematic schools, where we started that this year as well as part of our capital projects. Goal 5 is kitchen and restroom epoxy. We did this at Central Magnet. I don't know how many of you have been able to see it when we remodeled that school. A lot of our older schools have got ceramic tile that's been there originally. Smyrna Middle School was opened in 1961. It's the original tile. For for you mothers, there's been a lot of little boys that have been through that school, and once that ammonia gets into that grout, it no matter how much bleach or how much chemical, they smell like little boys. And it's been there since 1961. It's very expensive to remove the ceramic tile and replace it with ceramic tile. We can go over that tile with an epoxy foil product, which is what we're using now. We started this at John Coleman. We're using it in our kitchens and in our bathrooms. It's less expensive, it's easier to clean, the staff likes it better. You don't have to deal with grout and those kind of things. So we've got some schools, Oakland, Riverdale, Smyrna Middle, Smyrna High, Laverne High, those schools that are getting some age on. We need to go in there and do some work to there. We've also got some toilet partition issues at a couple of our schools. You're looking at somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000 a restroom to replace the toilet partitions. And we've got some issues. In some of our schools, you're looking at $100,000 a school. So those are on this list. We'll go on. Goal 6 is our fire sprinkler system. There's a new state law every 5 years. We have to go completely through all of our fire sprinkler systems. We're expending quite a bit of money this year through our general maintenance account to do this, and it needs to be part of our capital projects. Goal 8, something no one wants to hear, is the portable replacement. We actually have portables now that are approaching 30 years. You're looking at $5,000 to put a metal skin on them, $10,000 to roof them, $4,000 or $5,000 to replace the floors in them, and we've got a 30-year-old trailer. I hate to be the bearer, but some of these, they're getting to the point that they literally need to be taken out of service and a new one purchased to put in this place. So that's on our list. Goal 9 is our T-deck detention pond maintenance. Stormwater runoff is a big deal. If those ponds are not kept clean of trees and things that grow in there, should we have a major rain event, it clogs up, it can literally flood our schools, and we don't need that. We've had some neglect in the past, and we're working now to identify those areas and begin to get those back in shape, and we need some help there. Mr. Beaudry alluded to the proposed state legislation, $3.74 billion, that we could have potentially got. If you put that with the $7 million that the county gave us, you're looking at $10 billion. That's a lot of money. And it would go a long way to supporting us being able to maintain our buildings if we can get called. What you're going to see next is literally our survey of our roofs. I've given you roofs, HVAC, and King and Prima System for your reading benefit. We won't go through all of it, but I want you to understand how to read the roofing. If it's in red, it means that roof is now leaking. It's an imminent, it's in failure today. We're doing our best to keep these roofs patched, to keep them from leaking every rain event. The schools send us in it's leaking over here now, it was over there, we send our roofers out to patch it. So if it's in red, it is already in failure and it is leaking today. If it's in yellow, it means it's in bad shape, it's starting to blister, it's got problems. It may be minor leaking at this point, it's not major leaking, but it's next level down from imminent failure. The black cost means it's out, it's in bad shape, it's tier 3, but it's coming. Add all of those together. I gave you a capital project breakdown, but if we looked at just the roofing there, it's around $15 million. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Can you repeat what the black says what?
The black means it needs replacing. It's not failing yet, but it needs replacing.
Thank you.
What's the typical warranty on the roof?
Warranty, watertight warranty is typically 20 years. We usually use 20 years as a lifespan for a roof. But that warranty goes down after year 3. After year 3, your labor part of it is completely gone, and then they prorate your roof downward over the next 17 years.
Reason why I asked, on that Blackman High addition,
Yes, sir.
that had to have been built, Blackman opened in 2000, so I imagine that addition was added, I want to say sometime maybe in 2004 or 5.
Is that correct? Yes, sir. Is that typical for that to be in that? Well, I mean, my question is was there anything about that roof in particular that we didn't get, but somewhere around 12 to 13 years out of it?
The fleece back product, as we go down through there, depending upon where it was and how it was installed, there was a couple of runs of those that we didn't get the lifetime out of them that we should have. We've tried going back.
Is it just kind of hit or miss with it?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
We've tried going back. I think some of you lived through the Oakland years when I first came here. We spent, I know Mr. Estes did, the library. Every time it rained, we would go in there and hang plastic, and we would drain it to 55-gallon drums on wheels and roll water out, because we were in a lawsuit with that manufacturer. We spent 3 years fighting them in thousands and thousands of dollars to get to the point where we tore it off and fixed it. I would almost like to see us talk to our legal folks and not pay for warranties, find out what that warranty, we're paying for that warranty, maybe as much as $40,000 or $50,000, just go and take that money and set it aside, and then we use it to do some of this, or if we have a problem, quit paying this money to these manufacturers and we get no benefit from it. It's part of our construction cost, and I think if we could work it with our county commissioners to leave that money alone, we could begin to build a fund that would help us. It's not going to pay for it all, but I think we would get better bang for our buck putting that money aside and trying to use it this way than to pay it to an insurance company that we're going to have to fight and get no benefit. That's a personal opinion. So this is going to generate questions. If you have an additional question at a different time, call me. I'd be glad to talk to you about it. The next thing you'll see behind the roofing is orange and yellow. This is our HVAC. We're showing in yellow. These are kind of like our red. It's in imminent danger. A little over $23 million currently in HVAC that is failing. The yellow dollar figures out beside it, it's failing. If it's in orange and has a dollar figure beside it, that means it's in failure. If it's orange and does not have a dollar figure beside it, it means it's coming in the next 4 to 5 years, but right now we're doing okay with it. So if it's got a dollar figure beside it, we're already having major issues. So that's 23 million. I've broken down in our capital, the next thing you'll see, I apologize, the next thing you'll see is that Primus keying system, and I've got Primus yes, no. Primus means it's on our universal keying system that we're going to. Exterior, interior cost, I've broken it down by that because our priority is to get our exterior secure. We can go back and get the interior at a later date. We would like to get it all on there. We have some schools where the principal and the SROs are carrying around 5 to 6 master keys. Based on when it was added on to and who lost a key and when they decided to do another part. In an emergency situation, an administrator with multiple keys is not a good thing. Try and get us all down to one key. Then we've graded the exterior doors, good, bad, poor, and then some dollar figures out beside them. What you'll see next is the same format capital projects that I showed you last year where it's broken down each individual item. 22 million last year, we were given 7 million. This year, with everything, I've included the cost for the LED lighting. We're looking at 68 million. That's a lot of money. I don't care how you slice it. That's a lot of
I
money.
think that's an understatement.
It's, three components. Generate $56 million of this 68, three components. LED lighting, roofing, and HVAC. That's our three biggest components. Mr. Beaudry alluded to me talking to you about ways of taking care of this cost. We're not unique in where we stand today. Williamson County, Davidson County, Wilson County, names ring a bell. We're all in this same boat because we've all been chasing growth for the last 10 to 15 years. And we haven't had any funds available. We've been trying to live on $3 or $4 million of capital projects to try and put a Band-Aid on a roof, to try and take care of some doors, to try and take care of some paving. And these things have just snowballed on us. Some of our local government officials have been talking to some, what I refer to energy management companies. They're companies that come in and tell you, we can save you all this money on your energy bill if you'll let us redo your HVAC and change you out to LED lighting. And I'm not disagreeing with them. They say it won't cost you anything. We'll finance it for $20 million, and y'all pay us $3 or $4 million a year for the next 20 years. They're basically selling us a used car. I mean, put it in examples that the average person can understand. We either go buy the car ourselves, or we write a check, or we go to the bank and we borrow the money. What they're selling is borrowing the money from them. And then if they're all truthful, it's somewhere around 3 to 3.5% today is the rate. If we go to the bond market, let's say we treated this like a building program and the county was to borrow the money at the bond market, we're borrowing money at 1% or a little bit less. Now, yes, we're borrowing the money and we're having to start making those payments fairly soon versus staggering it out there 20 years. I think we could borrow this money over 3 years, this 60 million, 20 million a year over 3 years. If we can get this $3 million coming in from the state, it can help offset paying that bill, which is what Mr. Beaudry was alluding to. We can use that additional new revenue stream to pay for this. LED lighting will save us when it's all complete. We change out our LED lighting somewhere around $2.5 to $3 million a year in energy savings. Our HVAC, changing out everything that would be on this list, yes, we would effectively see some energy savings, but it's not that much. And these guys will tell you that if you separate the lighting from the HVAC, it's no longer profitable for them. They don't want to do it. They'll do the lighting by itself because all of their guarantees on the energy savings they can guarantee with the LED lighting. Without the LED lighting, they can't do it. And I'm not saying they're a bad way to go. I'm just saying you're borrowing money at 3% versus borrowing money at 1%. The difference is we don't have to go, the county doesn't have to go to the bond market and borrow the money. They just start making a note in a couple of years, and the note's over 20 years. It's a choice.
What's the lifetime of a LED light? What's how long?
Right now, they're telling us 25 years. And I'm all for it, you'll see it when we get to the maintenance side, they're wanting us to get changed over to LED lighting too. Because it'll save us on the maintenance side. There's no ballast. there's a 25-year life expectancy. Our schools right now are responsible for their athletic field lighting. They have to rent bucket trucks, cranes. Now that we've got turf field replacements, we're jumping up and down from the maintenance side, not wanting them to drive. Middle Tennessee Electric used to go to Oakland forever to change their lights, but they have to drive on the track to do it. So now we've got a brand new synthetic turf field, and we just spent $400,000 replacing the track, and we told them, you better not put a Middle Tennessee Electric truck on that track. Well, now they can't change the bulbs. They're going to have to pay somebody that has a crane that can actually put a man in the basket to change the bulbs. Part of this $16 million that you see here for LED lighting is to change out every athletic field in Rutherford County. Baseball, softball, soccer. If they've got lights, it's included in this package. They guarantee us 25 years. Anything happens, if a bulb burns out, they replace it. No cost to us at all. Plus we're saving money. It's about a 4 to 4.5, 5-year payback on the LED lighting. I'm selling LED lighting. I'm selling. Everybody else is going to. Dr. Sullivan laughed at me today. Mr. Spurlock asked me, he said, if we change this, will it help our students grow? And I said, yes, it'll make a better learning environment for my children. He laughed, poked me in the side and said, you're lost your mind. And he got on the internet and Googled it, and he looked at me and started laughing. He goes, there's 1,000 articles. So for people to research the LED lighting be better for kids. And I said, you thought I made this up. I didn't. It will. The big thing for us, it's a better light, it's a better quality light, and it'll save us money. It'll save us utility costs. So I'm selling it from that standpoint, and the student, it benefits the students as well. So those three items, if we could pull them out, roofing, the HVAC, and the LED lighting, we looked at a way that we could fund it, go to the county commission, ask them to fund it, or have them go to an energy management company. They're already here. They're circling like buzzards. They've been beating my door down. They've been beating Mr. Spurlock's door down. They're beating the county mayor's office down. Siemens has been here for a long time. Train is here. They're in Williamson County. Train is actually used to doing Williamson counties. They'll come in here, they'll tell you the same things I told you. They'll have some really nice graphs. I've got them back there in my office. They provide a service. That service is their loaning money. And they guarantee that there's some savings. I'm telling you, there's going to be savings. They're not lying to you. They're not lying to us. What they're really selling is that deferred money that you don't have to go to the county commission to get. They're selling the guarantee, the service to help you at any money. So that's the two different ways that Mr. Beaudry said that I would get to. And it's something for us to think about and have further discussion on. So after capital projects, we have facilities and energy efficiency. Goal number 1 for our maintenance department, LED lighting. Goal number 2 is MRG building logic, which is also part of our energy, our building automation system. It's an upgrade to the brains behind it. And then goal 3 is to clean our HVAC systems. We've got the Solarge and the crews that we've got. You know, you're basically looking at one maintenance guy trying to cover 3 or 4 schools. And there's very little to none preventative maintenance going on. And it's simply because there's just not enough of them to go around. I would go through would be a hire. I think we could do it over a couple of 3 years. Hire a company to help us clean our coils, clean our ductwork, clean our units. And then add a 4-man crew that all they do is do preventative maintenance and change filters. Over the last 5 to 7 years, we've been using our custodians to change our filters in our air conditioning units. Those poor souls, they've got more than they can say grace over. And we're asking them to change filters, and everybody thinks, well, I changed my filter at my house, it's not that big a deal. You go to an Oakland high school, you got 300 or 400 filters in that place. It probably takes 2 or 3 days for them to get around to it. And some months they don't get changed. They just can't get there. So they end up with a surplus of filters. They don't order as many the next month. So I'm looking at proposing we add 4 guys on, and that's all they do, is change filters throughout the county where they have a schedule, we get them a truck. And they actually clean coils and do preventative maintenance. Can we check and see that the belts work? Can we check exhaust fans? We got exhaust fans out in our bathrooms here. And I told them, don't worry about it right here, get our schools fixed first, and when we get caught up through this August, whatever, come in here, we'll do ours last. May not be the wisest choice, but I felt like we had to take care of the kids first, so I made that choice. So that's
If I
something.
might just real quickly ask you a question. On the filter changing too, I would think aside from building up filters that we're not using, if they're not being changed out regularly, then that's going to put more of a strain on the system, which is, yeah, I'm preaching the choir. I just wanted to make sure I was, okay.
That's something that we're looking at. We'd like goal 6 is employee training. This is something we have not done. I've been talking to our business partners, a lot of the people that we buy heavy equipment from. These pieces of equipment that we're buying now are more and more intricate, more and more high-tech, require computer training and that sort of thing. They offer training at their places. A lot of times it's in Dallas, Texas, or someplace like that. And I got 15 or 20 guys that need training on this piece of equipment. If I send them to Texas for 2 weeks, even if I send 2 or 3 at a time, I'm already down one man trying to cover 5 schools. We buy enough equipment that I've started making phone calls. They're willing to bring their training here. They're willing to come here and set up in our shop for 2 weeks. And we'll take half our crew today as class 1, the other half does their normal work orders, and the next day we'll swap, we'll rotate. We'll keep half the crews. They're willing to come do it. Nobody's ever asked. So we're going to push for these manufacturers that we buy a lot of equipment from to come in and train our people here. I've already talked to Allegiant, which is one of our hardware suppliers. We've got some new guys. We've got some guys that are fixing to retire. So we're going to have some new guys. The market, as we all know, is construction folks are in high demand right now. So whoever we get, we're going to need to provide training for them, especially on new equipment. So we're working with that, and that's a new priority for us, and we're going to bring them here to do it for us. Information technology. Goal 1 is our teacher computer replacements every 5 years. Goal 2 is to continue with our 2-to-1 student computers. We've gone away from the desktops and we're going to laptops. Goal 3 is our fire alarm replacements. We started that this year. We'll have a little bit more next year. We're hoping in the next 2 to 3 years we'll have all our fire alarms changed out. Our goal in 3 years is fire sprinkler, fire alarm, security cameras, exterior doors, and access control for our buildings. That's all student safety. Every bit of that is student safety. That's our goal in 3 years to have us all there. Goal 4 is our server upgrades. We are no longer a small district, as we all know. We've been operating on the shoestring. You're going to see phone switch upgrades and replacement, infrastructure upgrades, building security, and a district operations center. If you notice, the first 3 goals for information technology were students. Everything else is infrastructure. We're behind infrastructure-wise. We have one server room in the back. I've got another piece of equipment in another room. We have the phone switch up here in the front. we've got our infrastructure that's running our whole system scattered around this building in about 5 different places. We're at the point now where we've got to get it together, one central location, and we've got to have the proper equipment over the next 3 to 4 years to continue to run the computers and the system, and we're going more wireless and more internet-based and those types of things. Our infrastructure has got to catch up. We are the only major district in the state of Tennessee that does not have one at this time. What that means, there's not enough space in this building. In case y'all haven't walked around lately, we're shoehorning and we're moving. I'm helping Mr. Beaudry. I'm moving his cubicles, we're reworking his cubicles to get him 2 more cubicles in his spot. We're looking at special ed back there, reworking all of those cubicles to give Dr. Sullivan some more space. We've got 3 and 4 and 5 people. We're like our schools. We've got 3 and 4 people in every office now. And just like we've got children in we've turned closets and storage rooms into classrooms. In our schools, we're doing the same thing here. But we're running out of, like schools, running out of closets, we're running out of spaces too, so we're going to need to look at adding on to this building. And there's some discussion that's already started there, how far we need to go. But when we do that, we need to have a room that's for our server, get all of this stuff tidied up, and get it all together in one place so that we're ready in 3 to 5 years for what's coming 3 to 5 years and 10 years down the road after that. So that's on your list. Next you'll see is safety, life safety, and student protection. Goal number 1, here we go back to our integration, upgrade, and enhance DVRs and software. Develop interactive technology for complete virtual school, virtual access. That's part of our access control system. Goal 3 is develop an onboard dashboard allowing all school safety in one location. This is something that the City of Murfreesboro's GIS department and we stumbled into last year when we had the floods.
Ladies.
Nobody had any centralized information. We were all trying to figure out what to do about schools and buses and what the sheriff's department called an impassable road, the city called a pass at your own risk, and then it brought to light a whole myriad of other problems. Fortunately, I guess my cousin runs the GIS department for the city, and he went to their emergency management center and started developing an on-the-fly emergency management system so that we could all share the same information. And he started sending it to us because he was asking us for information because he knew we were transportation and myself. We were dealing with the sheriff's department, we were dealing with the Smyrna police and the Laverne police. We were on the phones with them constantly, and he said, "This is stupid. We're all just going in a circle. Let's get it in one place." So he started developing the dashboard. We started feeding him information. He started sending us the dashboard to look at. So after that kind of calmed down, I sat down with him one day over lunch and said, "This is a pretty neat idea. Where can we go with this?" So he and I started brainstorming, and I got with Mr. Krim and threw some ideas at him. It's come a long way. So we've got something that we think here in fairly soon we're going to be unveiled for us that's going to make any event that we were to have, heaven forbid, a shooting in our school. If a first responder got there that wasn't familiar with that school and it's on lockdown and they can't get to anybody, first thing they want to know is there a floor plan? If I go into this building, I don't know where I'm going. Secondly, how many students are here? How many administrators are here? How big is this school? What's their bell times? We can put all of this information in one place, and they can access it on the fly. We're going to work with the county GIS department. They're going to take their drones. and basically do fly around. So we would have, just like you were walking around the building, you could pick and choose, you could literally walk around the building. We're going to take our floor plans, we're going to integrate our camera system so that they can see, they could go literally, I see it, this is what it looks like from here, but this is the floor plan on the inside, this is the camera view that I'm looking at. Before they ever went in, they could actually be able to view that from outside. So we're doing some collaborative things with the city, things like this that we're got here that we're kind of thinking outside the box to get us better secure for our children. So that's what those kind of things are. The next thing you will see, and the last part of my part, is transportation. Transportation, we have 4 goals, 3 of them. The first one is the two-way radio replacement. This is part of the county's truncated change out the radio system. I would encourage any of you that do not listen to what these folks deal with on a daily basis to show up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and hang out till about 4:30. I don't know how they do what they do, honestly. We got one radio for the whole county, and I got every 300 bus drivers.
Yes, sir.
Talking on one radio system, and there's parts of Laverne and Eagleville where there's no signal, and they tell us the bus driver radios in, goes, okay, I'm going in, I'll call you when I get through, run my route, and I'm coming back out. I don't know about y'all, it's kind of spooky. But this is the new radio system that we're going to get to. 1.9 million is our part. The mayor has mentioned 18 plus million. I don't know if his $18 million figure includes our 1.9, because we haven't had any conversations with anybody. Or if that's in addition to, do we need to carry this in our budget, or is he going to carry it in the county budget? If they're not, we need to have this in next year's budget to upgrade the radio. So that's our part there. Bus video equipment, about $100,000 a year to keep it upgraded. Right now, we have 3 different systems. We're trying to, this year, get down to 2. And in the next couple of years, we'd like to be down to 1. So that we don't have to carry different memory cards and things like that. We're working that direction. So that's goal number 2. Goal number 3 is to upgrade our bus GPS and replace them. Goal number 4 is kind of typical. If we continue to grow and add schools, we're going to need to add 7 contractors a year, or 7 bus routes a year. That's kind of what that costs. So I know I've given you a lot of numbers and a lot of money, but I think we've come a long way in the last year of all these folks, all of us working together and really truly looking at where we are. And I hope you all feel better about our children's safety and where we're going with that. I appreciate what y'all have done in hiring, office, I still call him officer, Crim, even though he and I, from time to time, we pick up, he's a good guy at heart. So if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If you have any after tonight, after you look at all this book that I've provided, we can give me a call and I'll be glad to discuss it.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, I'd like to thank all of you that, I know that you guys, when we met earlier in the year, as we're going through and putting together these proposals, I think it's spot on. I think there's a lot of duplicity when you're working with safety, when you're working with transportation. I appreciate how you've coordinated all that. It sounds, and it is, a huge task, but I think there's some things in there that we can get accomplished, and I think there's some avenues that we can make this less problematic to us, and that's what we're going to be doing. There are some things that, as far as this revenue stream, that we'll be talking a little bit more about as there's an additional step on this one thing that Mr. Boulder and I are going to have to meet with some other individuals. Now, I don't think it's ever going to be enough money, but I think we can get to where you mentioned, where we can get caught up, and the addition, the money that we do get annually, currently, that can go a long way. I like the idea of maintenance. I think that's a big issue. I think we've had some, I mean, when I look at the age of some of these units and stuff like that, and I think it goes back to perhaps maybe, you know, we didn't have the capability of doing some maintenance work on those periodically. And when you add, and I mean, when you add more and more schools, it gets even more challenging. The last thing I told you guys today when we were going over this, I said, you know, we're going to go in debt when we build a school, and then we're going to go in debt when we're actually maintaining some of our schools, and it's a huge task, but that's the business. That's what you pay when you're in a system that's growing like we are, and you know, and I would agree what Mr. Bodery said earlier. When we develop our budget, we're not spending all of our budget. I mean, it's not like that we're spending our budget. We're saving because the last 2 years we've had to use an end fund balance that's somewhere near $35 million. And that can get problematic over time. Any questions? We're going to continue tweaking this. We're looking for feedback. We'll probably even present this to one of our clusters, our town halls sometime. Not the October one, but before we complete it all.
Sorry. I wanted to just, I mean, our state has a surplus. To me, it seems like it would be better use of that money than us borrowing this money.
Surplus just went over $1 billion. That's that rainy day fund, and it hadn't rained in a long time. It's just sitting there. It's been there for years. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. I'm afraid we may be facing another voucher type thing where, of course, they had no problem throwing away millions there, in my opinion, thrown away, but whatever. But I'm afraid that we're going to be in another situation where we have to just lobby them continuously, and we've finally lost, finally. But if the county commission, and I don't know about the city school system now, I haven't talked to Mr. Campbell about this at all, so I don't know where because they've got the same problems, exactly the same problems. And if we're going to have a joint resolution, I sure would like to see them participate in that, but that would be their choice, of course. But the county commission has continually looked for and asked and begged the state legislature to come through with some money to help us build our fund or whatever. And they have continually refused really to do that, except increasing the BEP somewhat, and that's been it. And then cut our request this last time by $7 million. Even though Mr. Lee explained to them, I'm not sure how many times, but maybe 3 times that night in that joint meeting about some of these very things that you went through here in detail tonight. And then they turned right around, and in an hour and a half meeting, or 2 hours, cut it $7 million. We got to get together on this, or we'll never get any of this stuff done. Never.
I know I'm a newbie on this, but I do thank you, Mr. Lee, and everyone, the support staff. I feel like I have a better grasp of what our needs really are. So thank you for all your efforts in putting into this. I just think, you know, we've got all this stuff to do, and then the heartbeat of our schools is our teachers, and they're always the last ones to be compensated. So the rubber has to meet the road somewhere.
Anyone else? Again, thank the staff for their hard work. We appreciate it. And anybody got any questions, be sure and call them and ask. We're adjourned.